His Excellency Chief Olusegun Matthew Okikiola Aremu Obasanjo, former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Please be seated. Can't you see me? Is there anybody who cannot see me? Well, why do you make them feel that I'm shorter than I am? Let me begin by congratulating the government and the good people of this country on the occasion of this year's Republic Day celebration. Happy celebration. I understand it's a week-long celebration that will culminate in a number of activities on Friday. I wish I could be here with you. Let me acknowledge the presence of a brother, a fellow soldier in the field of working for West Africa and Africa, and if you like, humanity as a whole. And of course, I'm talking of my brother, Mohammed,
Recording in progress.
Has rightly been put here as chairman of this occasion. Mohammed, I appreciate your being here. Thank you very much for being here. Let me also acknowledge the presence of the Minister of Defense and for your accepting to be guest of honor, and also to honor me and Mohammed by you accepting to be guest of honor. Let me come to this special invention of Nigeria, because in Nigeria, after you have gone through the very nice and long protocol that OC has nicely put out to us, Nigeria will still say all protocols observed. I don't know what other protocols you are observing, but there we have it. I must, at this juncture, thank the commandant of the Command and Staff College for your kind invitation. And I feel proud to be here among you, colleagues, past and present. Because here in Teshi, as it has been mentioned, is where I began my military career. I was a member of what is Ross 10, and as you may be aware, in those days we have two sets a year coming from Nigeria, from Sierra Leone, of course from here, and from Gambia. And my presence in Teshi today brings back fond memories of my experience at Ross, along some of my brothers then, like the late General Manuel Eskin, Colonel Kabore, who was my roommate, Techi Mensin and Adekunle. They were our next door neighbor, and they were fighting like two dogs. I am therefore greatly honored that the Command and Staff College has found me worthy of delivering this year's Public Day lecture. When I accepted the invitation to deliver this lecture, I did so with mixed feelings. On one hand, I was excited to return to Teshi and speak at such an auspicious occasion. On the other hand, I was gloomy about the topic of this year's Republic Day lecture, which is ECOWAS and its survival, impact of the alliance of the Sahelian states, and the way forward. I was gloomy because of the dilemma in which the region has found itself. I asked myself the question, which many well-meaning people have been asking: how did we get here? Indeed, today's lecture centers on two questions. First, how did we get here? And second, where do we go from here? And it's all encapsulated in the title. Let me attempt to delve into the question of how we got here. 50 years ago, in May 1975, leaders of our West African region took the bold and visionary decision to create the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, as a vehicle to foster economic cooperation, integration, and development among member states. It wasn't easy for them because the colonial powers, I should say, but particularly France, did not take kindly to what our leaders were trying to do. But for President Obasanjo, if he had not put his foot down, the French would have stopped the creation of ECOWAS. The regional bloc operated on several fundamental principles, and including equality and independence of member states, solidarity and collective self-reliance, cooperation and harmonization of policies, non-aggression, peaceful dispute resolution, promotion of human rights, and good governance. With such principles, it didn't take long for ECOWAS to become the pride of Africa as the continent's most vibrant regional economic bloc. Until recently, the Union recorded many accomplishments and successes which made it the envy of other regional blocs. In the area of peacemaking and peacekeeping, ECOWAS intervention in countries like Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea-Bissau, and the Gambia, among others, helped to end conflict and provide stability. In Côte d'Ivoire, we held a number of meetings here in Accra for peace and sustenance of democracy. But I will come back to that later. But before, I can just say here, we had Accra 1, Accra 2, Accra 3, and I think, didn't we have Accra 4 before we moved to Yamoussoukro? And President Gbagbo frustrated all efforts. And on one of the Accras, I think Accra 3, at 5 a.m., I went to his room. He was in his bed with pants. And I said, brother, I want to talk to you like two brothers. So he said, what do I want to say? I said, tell me, between two of us, what exactly do you want? And he said, I want to win election. I said, but you are frustrating election. He said, because I'm not sure I will win. Which is honest. And I said, well, look, if I can put it to you, there are 4 pillars, 4 political pillars in your country. You are one pillar. Bede is one pillar. Ouattara is one pillar. Soro is one pillar. If you will win election, you must be able to control at least 2 pillars, but better still, 3. How many 2? Which are the 2 pillars you are now controlling? Except himself as a pillar. He wasn't controlling any other pillar. So I said to him, when you can control 2 pillars, you are on the way to winning election. And I said, the 2 pillars that can you bring to yourself is Soro, the young man, is your protege, and can't you handle that? The second is Bide. He has been there. He doesn't need what he seemed to be working on. And he thanked me profusely. But before he could move to Bide, Ouattara has got Bide into his pocket. And then he thought he got Soro. But when the chiefs were down, Soro was not in his pocket. It was in somebody else's pocket. Now, the creation and deployment of a peacekeeping force, the Economic Community of West African States Monitoring Group, in 1990, ECOMOG, primarily in response to the Liberian Civil War, was, in my view, the high point of of ECOWAS regional peace and security initiatives, and I am proud that Nigeria and Ghana were at the forefront of the contribution of troops to ECOMOG missions. In the 1990s, ECOMOG became a household name in the region and took a pride of place as Africa's most celebrated success peacekeeping case study. In homes across the region, there was a deep connection with and appreciation of other West African nationals, due in large part to ECOMOG. Regional solidarity and confidence in the Union reached unprecedented levels. ECOMOG troops were welcomed and celebrated in troubled countries across the region, in spite of allegations of human rights abuses in some cases. The achievement of ECOMOG in conflict situations in West Africa have led some commentators to describe it as, and I quote, an example for the rest of the world to follow. And again, I quote, unique feat in both military and peacekeeping terms. It's something that we were all proud of. In the areas of social and economic integration, the ECOWAS passport and protocol on free movement enable citizens of member states to travel, reside, and establish businesses within the region without visas. Policies like the ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme, ETLF, aimed to promote duty-free trade among member states, fostering economic integration. Maybe at this point, I should mention a failure for which I will partly take responsibility. We agreed to common currency, ECO, and we left it entirely in the hands of experts. And they gave us, I think, 4 or 5 convergences. Ahmed, you will remember. And what happened? When Nigeria met 3 of these convergences, Ghana will meet 2. When Ghana met 3, Nigeria will meet 2. And so we never converged. And that was a mistake. When I became elected president, we had enough money at the stage, over $50 billion in our reserve, and over 25 billion in what we call excess crude. We could have taken those that were ready, and we had enough foreign exchange to back it. Maybe we should have at that time taken 2 francophone and 2 anglophone countries, and we would have got there as far as ECO, common currency, is concerned. Another area in which ECOWAS has achieved significant success is the area of strengthening democracy and democratic institutions in member states. In 1975, when ECOWAS was established, many of the member states were led by military junta. The 1980s and 1990s saw a wave of democratization across the sub-region, with ECOWAS at the center of promoting democracy by setting and enforcing democratic norms, promoting good governance, and addressing unconstitutional changes of government. This was made possible by a change in the scope of ECOWAS to include democratic principles. ECOWAS, at its inception, was purely an economic tool, with the key pillars of its establishing treaty being 1, economic integration, 2, free movement, and 3, harmonization of policies. The treaty was established to promote cooperation and integration in order to create an economic and monetary union for economic development, growth, and prosperity in West Africa. It was meant to cover aspects of economic activity, particularly industrialization, transportation, telecommunication, energy, agribusiness, monetary and financial areas, social and cultural matters. The focus was the economic welfare and well-being of the people of West Africa through monetary and custom union, binding together through legislation, productive capacities and capabilities, and market of West Africa. It took about 20 years for the scope of ECOWAS to be expanded to include issues such as democratic governance, economic and social justice, and the promotion of human rights. This expansion of the scope of ECOWAS was captured in the revised Treaty of July 1993. The difference between the 1975 treaty and the 1993 treaty is important to highlight because it set the stage for understanding some of the successes of ECOWAS as well as some of the challenges bedeviling the organization and indeed the West African sub-region today. I believe that some of the criticisms of ECOWAS today stem from this fundamental shift of the organization from one which focused on regional economic integration to one which dabbled into internal political issues of member states. That shift has proven to be a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it has been used to bring peace and stability in some countries in the region, such as I said earlier, in Liberia, in Sierra Leone, and in Cote d'Ivoire, in Guinea-Bissau. On the other hand, it has created problems that have now led to the withdrawal of 3 key member states, showcasing the apparent weakness of the organization in dealing with internal political issues of member states, especially when confronted by defiant leadership. Events of the recent past have caused great concern about the fate of the Union as it confronts the challenges caused by withdrawal of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger from ECOWAS and their subsequent formation of the Alliance of Sahel States, AES. The region also faces challenges around security, safety, well-being, and progress of the people of West Africa. Some of these challenges include, I think Mohammed brought this out, terrorism and extremism, particularly in the Sahel states, which has led to increased violence and instability across the West African sub-region, ease of access to guns, even though Mohammed is looking after keeping guns silent, he's not looking after transfer or access to guns. We hope that if we cannot stop access to guns, we can keep them silent. Increased poverty and inequality. According to reports, 7 of the world's 10 most unequal countries are in Africa, with West African governments being the least committed to reducing inequality on the continent. Increased political instability leading to coups and counter-coups, with 6 successful coups and numerous unsuccessful coups in the last 5 years alone. Permit me just to remind you of some of these successful coups in West Africa since 2020. Mali 2020, President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta was overthrown by Colonel Assimi Goïta on August 18, 2020. Also Mali 2021, Transitional President Ba Indo was ousted by Vice President Colonel Assimi Goïta on May 24, 2021. Guinea 2021, President Alpha Condé was detained and the constitution dissolved by Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya on September 5, 2021. Burkina Faso 2022, January 2022, President Rochmark Christian Kabore was overthrown by Lieutenant Colonel Paul Henry Sandaogo Damiba on January 24, 2022. September 2022, Lieutenant Colonel Paul Henry Sandaogo Damiba was ousted by Captain Ibrahim Traore on September 30, 2022. Niger Republic 2023, President Mohamed Bazoum was ousted by Colonel Amadou Abdraman and General Abdraman Chani on July 26 to 28, 2023. Let us not bother to mention the foiled coups or alleged coups, because it will seem that in a country like Burkina Faso, foiled coups have become a regular occurrence. The resurgence of coups and unconstitutional change of government in West Africa has been a litmus test for the effectiveness and relevance, if not survival, of ECOWAS. The coups trend and the efforts by ECOWAS leaders to push back with sanctions and threats of military intervention led to the withdrawal of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger Republic from ECOWAS, and their subsequent establishment of a new union, the Alliance of Sahelian States, AES, about a year ago. The split by the trio has left ECOWAS in a very precarious situation. We should bear in mind that in the 50 years history of the organization, the exit by the AES countries was the first of such exit, and in such number. The unprecedented move caught ECOWAS off guard and exposed the regional bloc's weaknesses in dealing with defiant member states. It showed that sanctions were no longer enough to keep member states in check, and threats of military action were to aggravate the situation. We could see that a heavy-handed ECOWAS only alienated member states. And yet, what is the point of having a union if it cannot exert influence, if not control, over member states? But it all depends on how. I will come back to this. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the true color of our situation in West Africa. Where then do we really go from here? From my experience, and as is now obvious to all, regional and continental organizations are effective only to the extent to which they are able to enshrine common goals and shared benefits. The ECOWAS story today is one which should serve as a reference point to all who are tasked with managing regional and continental organizations. As President of Nigeria from 1999 to 2007, I've had my fair share of interaction with ECOWAS to know that what is confronting the organization today is mostly a leadership issue. It takes great understanding of the issues confronting the West Africa sub-region to navigate the leadership of ECOWAS. From 1976 to 1979, I had the opportunity to run the affairs of Nigeria as military head of state. I assumed office just about a year after the signing of the Lagos Treaty that created ECOWAS, and I immediately recognized that it was my responsibility and duty as Nigeria's leader to join hands with the colleagues across West Africa to nurse the new path ECOWAS and put it on the path of survival, growth, and progress. And let me tell this story. The treaty was signed in 1975, but nothing else was done other than the signing. We had to locate the, what do you call them? The headquarters, the finance, and all that. And we had a meeting. It was a long meeting, overnight. We started from the morning, and we went into about 2 a.m. in the night. And what was the problem? The problem was location of the headquarters. President Ayadema wanted the headquarters in Lome. I wanted the headquarters in Lagos. And we were on this. And President Ofokwai at 2 a.m. said, let us call it off and let the night provide wisdom. So we call it off. And then he came to my room and said, look, can't you agree that the headquarters should be in Lagos and the headquarters for the finance and all that, anything pertaining to money, should be in Lome? I said, well, rather than for us not to have agreement, I will agree to that. And then the following morning, President Ufukwain said, well, night has provided wisdom. Headquarters will be in Lagos and financial headquarters will be in Lome. And everybody clapped. And we got solution. Now, my early involvement with ECOWAS culminated in my appointment, as I said, as chairman of the regional bloc from 1978 to 1979. Indeed, it was a most challenging task building such a regional organization from scratch, but with the commitment, dedication, and support of all member states. We succeeded in keeping ECOWAS alive during those critical infant years of the organization. Had we, the leaders of the West African sub-region at the time, allowed our prejudices or our egos get the better of us, ECOWAS would have been stillborn, or would have been born and will have died within a few years of its power. Even in those days, we were confronted with some of the challenges of today. Yet, as responsible leaders, we manage those challenges bearing in mind that shared prosperity, collective security, and common security and collective self-sufficiency were more beneficial than ego trips, muscle flexing, or grandstanding. We were able to reach compromises. I've given you an example, even on matters bordering on sovereignty of our country and on our individual national interests. A lot of work was put into building confidence, trust, consensus, and cooperation among member states, such that even where the stick was applied, there was little doubt as to the overall motive of the initiative. In my view, ECOWAS remains a worthy initiative, and its accomplishments over the years cannot be wished away or easily forgotten, in spite of overwhelming current realities, gaps, and challenges. If we are to make any progress with ECOWAS, and indeed in the West African sub-region, let us consider some of the difficulties and handicaps of the organization since its establishment, and try to find solutions where possible. The first and major challenge, in my opinion, is its colonial heritage and the baggage of divisions along Francophone, Anglophone, and Lusophone countries, with reasonable grip on lives, economy, and monetary matters by erstwhile colonial power, especially in Francophone countries. Added to this are issues of political instability, corruption, internal conflicts, and violence emanating from youth lack of education, skill acquisition, empowerment, and of course, their unemployment. Other dangers and criminalities go with these, such as banditry, terrorism, kidnapping, violent extremism, drug and human trafficking. And of course, these coupled with easy access to guns make for almost impossible security to be maintained in our region. Election-related violence and deadly epidemic and pandemic must not be left out. But what are the organs and the instrument of ECOWAS to execute its program, to achieve its objective, and to ward off the unwanted? Of the 5 major organs of ECOWAS are the authority of the heads of state and government, which is the highest executive body of the organization, with the Council of Ministers, followed by the Commission, which carries out the day-to-day function of running the office or the executive secretariat of the organization and implementing the decisions of the executive body, the authority and the council. The 3rd major organ is the parliament, which is supposed to make laws that will gradually bind the economies of the countries together. The 4th is ECOWAS Court of Justice, and the 5th major organ is the Bank for Development and Investment. These are, there are other minor organs and instruments that are purposely created for specific function. The structure is akin to the structure of governance of a country with executive, legislature, and judiciary, but in this case, lacking in defense and security apparatus and maintenance of law and order. No police, no matter what the executive or the authorities may decide. Although progress has been admittedly slow, we have something to show for and to be proud of. ECOWAS was the most advanced, as I said, and most successful of the 5 regional economic communities in Africa. We have common passport, and we need no visa to visit the 15 countries of ECOWAS. It would have been significantly progressive if we had immediately followed common passport with common visa, which will have provided free movement within the 15 countries for investors and visitors who want to do business with West Africa. The bank is established and functioning. Apart from the offices of the major organs being structurally and functionally established, offices of minor organs and instruments are also functionally operational. These include Council of Ministers, the Tribunal, Intergovernmental Action Group Against Money Laundering and Terrorism Financing in West Africa, ECOWAS Peace Fund, ECOWAS Plan of Action Against Climate Change, Protocol on Dealing with Corruption, Prevent, Suppress, and Eradicate, Organizations Regional Resilience Strategy, including governance, social protection, and inclusion. Provision was made for 4 pillars of peace, security, stability, and good governance. There is even provision of code of ethics for the states in institutions and personnel within ECOWAS. Almost every aspect that could make for a thriving, peaceful, harmonious, inclusive, and united, fast-developing regional economic community organization was put on paper, but they are not useful enough because they are kept more by breach, neglect and lack of accountability, transparency, and implementation. The lacuna made ECOWAS more of a paper organization, not adequately fulfilling the real and genuine purpose and objective of its founding father. The enthusiasm and commitment of the founders were neither matched nor maintained. Take just one aspect, corruption. Let anyone point with certainty to any country in ECOWAS where corruption in different forms or guises is not the bane of development and progress. All the four principles of equality of states, interstate cooperation and harmonization of policy, no aggression between member states, and maintenance of regional peace, security, stability, predictability, and prosperity through good neighborliness were all jettisoned at one time or the other. We do not need to go back to the drawing board. We have all we need for a bouncing, thriving, and the best regional economic community organization in the world. We have made mistakes of omission and commission. Let's now follow the spirit and the letters of the treaty, the protocols, and the essential principles, instruments, and guidelines of the organization. Let our leaders study the treaty in detail and act to fulfill the principles and objectives of it, rather than rashly act in seeming ignorance, recklessness, and abandonment. Let us closely look at the action of the three countries that have opted out of ECOWAS. Their complaints and grievances, their reaction, the commonality of interests, and the need for gradual re-engineering to rebuild confidence and trust, to work together in areas of common interest such as peace, security, stability, predictability, free movement, climate, economic development of the same people across our porous borders. The grievances of the three of them were: one, no support by ECOWAS for them to fight insurgency and terrorism. Two, threats of attack by ECOWAS countries of Nigeria, Benin Republic, and Cote d'Ivoire. Three, closure of borders against them. Four, cutting off of power. Five, non-provision of foreign exchange for them to even import fuel. For now, they feel sore and very strongly anti-ECOWAS. I come here. But when President John Mahama was being inaugurated as president of Ghana in January this year, the three countries were fully represented. In the case of Burkina Faso, the military leader, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, was present himself and was greeted with loud and deafening ovation by the youth when he was introduced. The other two countries were represented by their prime minister. In the evening of that inauguration day, I met with President Mahama. We agreed that he may be the entry point of ECOWAS in diplomacy with the alliance of Sahel states, since they came to his inauguration as they did. His feedback after he had visited the 3 countries indicated that with the grievances listed, they will not consider returning to ECOWAS immediately. But they appreciated areas of common interest mentioned earlier, where bilaterally or multilaterally ECOWAS and AES can work together. I believe one thing they should not do is to bring visa back for us to be able to visit our country. That would be a very, very unfortunate retrogression. Such areas as free movement of goods and people, climate change, and so on. With the high risk of coups in the region, West Africa must find new solutions to governments emerging from non-constitutional means. The old measures have woefully failed. ECOWAS is wounded for now, maybe not mortally, but it is in intensive care unit. It will require strong and proactive political attention to keep it alive and healthy again, and that may take a long time, maybe a decade or even more. I have 2 great fears. One is youth reaction to events in West Africa. They see it, what is happening in these 3 countries, as they relish it. And that is a problem. It's something that should worry all of us. Because the point is that I have not been to any of the 3, but I have been to Guinea-Conakry. And when I visited Guinea-Conakry some time ago, I spent 2 nights. And what I came up with is that the military leaders in Guinea-Conakry are not in a hurry to go. They are thinking of a generation. And Faki was still the chair of the AU Commission. And I went to him and I said, this is my observation. Oh, he said, even in my own country, it's the same thing. Now, if that is the situation, what is our antidote? Number 2, military confrontation between ECOWAS and AES, with possibility of proxy war being staged in 2 regions of Africa. If, as we have it now, Russia takes one side and Ukraine takes another side, we will be in great trouble. The leaders must be made conscious of these fears and avoid them like plagues. Our leaders don't need to act out of fear of themselves and among themselves. No. As we were saying, we are the same. When I was here as a cadet in 1958, we have an exercise of endurance and map reading. They will drop us somewhere. They will give us the map and the compass and show us on the map. They won't tell us where we are, but they will show us on the map where we had to go. I don't know whether you still have that. And I started going, and I got into a farm. I saw this farmer. Well, in my head, how do I talk to a farmer here in Ghana? I don't speak the local language. Can this farmer speak English? And when I talked to the farmer, he turned out to be a Yoruba farmer. So my problem was solved. And he said to me, go this way and go that way, and you get to the hill. And that was what I did. And I got to the hill. What our leaders need to fear is the outside support which some of them cling to, and which is expensive and may be altogether not reliable in the end. Let us correct the errors of the past without blame game. We are intertwined, intermixed, interconnected, and intermingled. We cannot decouple what it is. We will remain in this region of West Africa together, and we must understand that as a reality and make amends to work and work together regionally, and as soon as we can within the same organization. We live in a common house, and we should mend the house together for our common good. Living in silos make us weak and expose us and turn us to prey for predators, no matter our population size, or our land mass. But together, we are strong and can face and overcome difficulties and succeed together in common security, shared prosperity, and shared value. Just as a matter of information, let me conclude my remarks by reflecting on 50 years of the contribution of Nigeria with the cause or objectives of ECOWAS. Let me begin with the building of befitting headquarters and facilities to accommodate the organs of ECOWAS that are located in Nigeria. But that was part of the reason Nigeria took on, accepted the responsibility of locating the headquarters or hosting the headquarters, and it has to live up to it. It is the obligation we accepted along with the location of the headquarters in our country. Nigeria provided majority of troops of ECOMOG, I've said that, Nigeria and Ghana, that resolved the conflict in Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea-Bissau, and to end violence in those countries. Nigeria built roads across the border into Benin Republic and Niger Republic. Nigeria invested heavily in cement and sugar industry in Republic of Benin. Nigerian investors were encouraged and assisted to invest in cement industry in Senegal and Niger Republic. Nigeria built technical training center for Sierra Leone to help train and rehabilitate, training and rehabilitation of the immobilized fighters. Nigeria investment and investors are dotted all over West Africa, with Nigerians being in command of the so-called informal economy of West Africa. The West African gas project and the power plant were spearheaded by Nigeria, with loan given at concessionary rate for member states to contribute to the execution of the project. There are a number of other collaboration and cooperation areas where Nigeria has rightly taken lead in the past. It will appear that where Nigeria fails, other efforts fail as well. Nigeria has overwhelming responsibility and obligation for the success of the sub-region in the best interest of the organization and particularly in Nigeria's best self-interest. Let me reiterate that West African leaders must at all times recognize that the region needs common security, peace and shared value, shared prosperity, and shared progress. Any of us that is an oasis within a desert is deceiving itself. It will dry up and dry up fast. We need to make ourselves and expand our oasis until we get rid of desert in West Africa. Let's make ECOWAS a solid block of implementing Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement and Agenda 2063. Our collective economic prosperity and progress in Africa depend on it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention. Sorry, they say I haven't finished. I finished the standing and it remained the sitting.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we can give him another round of applause. Thank you so much.